And we are live. Hey, how's it going, Total Fitness Bodybuilders? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for Friday, December the 8th. Another week has rolled around, another Friday. TGIF. Getting closer and closer to Christmas. We have the Christmas tree up at the Hayward household, so we are getting in the Christmas spirits closer and closer as we move along. So let us see. Is this coming through loud and clear? Hopefully it is. Mr. YT says it is loud and clear. Appreciate that. Let me know. I always like to do a audio and video check before we get things underway. And I had a few issues with the audio and video earlier. For those of you who are regulars, you know, a while back we were using a different camera setup, and for some reason, the streaming software test, 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 test. All right. I just jiggled the cord ever so slightly, and I must have jiggled it loose. Can you hear me? Are we back? Are we back on? Loud and clear, loud and clear. I said audio went out, but we're loud and clear. All right. Oh, all right. Fingers crossed we can get this thing going. So I think we got some people popping onto the live stream. We're streaming simultaneously from the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, as well as the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page. So wherever you happen to be tuning in from, you'll be able to participate and comment on our chat through the comment section. So on the YouTube channel, there you have the live stream, and then to the side, there's a chat window. If you're watching through Facebook, there should be comments below the video. Either one is fine, and they'll come through on my end, so you can post any questions and topics of discussion that you would like me to cover in our video chat today into the comments, and I will do the best I can to help you out over the course of our video chat. So any specific things that you want to discuss related to fitness and nutrition, so be it workouts or eating plans or supplementation, feel free to type questions related to that. If there's any specific challenges you're dealing with when it comes to building muscle or losing fat or achieving any athletic performance goals that you're going for, feel free to type those questions and topics of discussion in there as well. And again, I'll do the best I can to help you out over the course of our chat. If I can help you, I will let you know and answer. And if I can't, then I ain't going to BS you because I don't claim to be a know-it-all, even though I have been doing this for over the north of 30 years now. I've been involved with the fitness industry and coaching people for well over 20 years. So I've learned a few things along the way, but I don't claim to know it all, right? I try to stay quite humble in my approach. And if I can't help you, or I don't feel I'm qualified to answer a particular question or topic of discussion that you may have, I will try my best to point you in the right direction to somebody who can, because I have quite a large network in the fitness industry that I might be able to point you in the right direction to people who can help you if you do have some specific challenges that are unique to you and your situation. All right, so let's see. I'm going to just make sure this is coming through loud and clear. And for those of you tuning in, please introduce yourself, especially if you're brand new. If you're brand new to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat, or maybe this is your first time tuning in live, because I know a lot of people actually catch the replays and are not able to make the live video chats. But if you are tuning in live, please let me know in the comment section. And we will get this show underway. Let us see. Sean's got an interesting question. He says, is it true that milk blocks some of the absorption of vitamins and minerals? And it depends. It certainly can to a degree. Now, it doesn't mean that milk or dairy products in general are bad, but calcium is one of the most dominant minerals in the body. In fact, it's probably the dominant mineral in the body. So it takes priority over a lot of other things. So if your body has to compete to absorb different vitamins or minerals, especially minerals, the calcium will very often be the dominant one and get absorbed at the expense or at a greater priority than other minerals. So, for example, it's not recommended to consume zinc and calcium together, ideally, if you're supplementing, that is, because the calcium would take priority and get absorbed and may block some of the absorption of the zinc. And this may happen to other vitamins and minerals. In fact, you can kind of Google search it to see exactly which ones could be affected. But if you are going to supplement with like a calcium supplement, or you're going to be consuming a lot of dairy products, then it might not be ideal to have that be the time when you're taking your vitamin and mineral supplements, right? Try to take them in meals without a lot of extra added calcium so that the calcium doesn't block the absorption. I mean, don't take this the wrong way. Like, we need calcium. Calcium is still good, but because it's so needed and because it is so important, it very often takes priority. So then some of the less important minerals, which are still important in the greater scheme of things, but in order of priority, right? They're lower on the rank, if you will. They can get blocked in favor of the more dominant mineral. So, yeah, there is a bit of truth to that. But from the grand perspective of things, as long as you're eating natural unprocessed food and eating lots of nutrient dense foods, eating frequent meals throughout the day and kind of meeting your needs from that point of view, you should be okay. And then, of course, some moderate supplementation along the way to kind of as an insurance balance to fill in those gaps can certainly help as well. But one thing that I have that you may find very helpful for this, a while back, I wrote a full PDF guide of vitamin and mineral intake for athletes. And when I say athletes, I'm not necessarily saying like competitive athletes or professional athletes. It's vitamin and mineral intake for active individuals. We could reword it in that way as well. But it's for people who are placing extra demands on their body and need optimal vitamin and mineral intake, because the RDA, the recommended daily allowance for vitamins and minerals, is generally set way too low. In fact, nutritional requirements that are set by the RDA are kind of like your bare bones minimum. They will keep you alive, but they're not necessarily designed to help you thrive, if that makes sense. So they may prevent a serious nutritional deficiency if you meet those bare minimums, but it's not necessarily optimal for maximizing your athletic performance, for maximizing your overall health and well-being. So there's a lot of times when we need to actually go above and beyond in certain vitamins and minerals to make sure that we're at that optimal level. And just as a little side note, the whole RDA, where that came about was back in the World Wars, back in World War II, I believe it was, when soldiers were literally dying from malnutrition. And they came up with this scale, like, what do we need to feed our soldiers to keep these guys alive so they're not dying from malnutrition out on the battlefield? Because not only were they dying from war, bullets and wounds and real life fighting and conflict, but they were dying from the malnutrition of being out, out for so long with inadequate food supply. And that's where the whole RDA came from. It's like, what's our bare minimum to keep people alive? It's not optimal. And as more research is done and this has evolved, we realize that a lot of those recommended daily allowances are set way too low. Again, it may keep you alive, but there's a big difference between alive and thrive. So if you would like to get a copy of that vitamin and mineral guide, I have it. Join us over on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group, because that is a free bonus that I give away to everybody who joins that group. So if you haven't already done so, head on over to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group on Facebook, request to join, and you will be able to request a copy of that vitamin and mineral guide. And I send that out to all the members. And for those of you who may have just recently joined the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group, and if you didn't get a copy of that, reach out to me, let me know, send me a Facebook message, and I'll make sure that you get a copy, because that is a free bonus that is made available to everybody who joins the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group. But obviously not everyone takes advantage of it, but it is there. It's a free bonus for everybody who comes on board. All right, let's see what else we got. And just to let you know, the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group I'm referring to, there's no charge. You just literally go to Facebook, search for the group, request to join. And if you're a good fit for the group, I will approve you. Okay? And I'm sure most of you are a good fit for the group. The only people who are not good fits for the group are spammers, or, and that usually gets filtered out very quickly, right? If I approve someone, then the next thing you know, they're posting up all kinds of not appropriate material or just crap and BS and whatever. They get blocked from the group. So it's not an open group. It is still a private group, but there's no charge to come on board with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. All right, let's see what else we got there. YT is joining in. He says, Lee, I snapped up. All right, let me decipher this. I snapped my shit up. I snapped my poop up from hanging leg raises, then running on the treadmill at 8 miles an hour, I would assume. How? I don't know. You tell me. You're the one who did it. I didn't even load the spine with squats and deadlifts. Once out of the gym, low back pain and couldn't move. Okay, so you were doing hanging leg raises and running on the treadmill, and you hurt your lower back, right? How did you do it? Again, I don't know the specifics. I wasn't there. I mean, I can't really dissect it just by that, but you pulled a muscle, you strained something, or you impinged a nerve. Something happened. Now, usually, right? I'm just being generalization here. Usually, this will probably heal up on its own. Like maybe it is you pulled a muscle, maybe you impinged a nerve in your lower back or something like that, and you tweaked it. And usually it's probably from the running, right? Like it may have been aggravated from the leg raises, because that does engage the whole core. Even though it's primarily an abdominal exercise, you're still going to engage your lower back and your obliques and all the major muscles of the core, as secondary and supporting muscles. So you could have caused some weird loading or weird twinging in your lower back from that. And then once you started doing the running on the treadmill, which is quite a brisk speed. I mean, if that's 8 miles an hour, that's moving, right? That's a brisk speed on the treadmill. Again, you might have just twisted, thrown it out, and who knows? Like sometimes you do the most stupidest things and you can get an injury. Like I remember, this is a while back now, but I threw my back out bending over to clip my toenails. Like, and it's just like so stupid. Like I just, right, like you would, I propped my foot up and I just bent over, and whatever I did, just the way I twisted over, it's just like, oh, and then like, oh man, my back was just killing me for like over a week. And sometimes I see this, just bend over to pick up something. You drop something on the floor, and just the way you bend over to pick it up, maybe you're not in the right position or whatever, and something gives, right? You might have pinched a nerve, you might have pulled a muscle, strained something, twist something the wrong way. Who knows what happened? But sometimes you get those stupid injuries, and it's crazy how this sometimes happens. Like I've seen some miraculous events, like people having these dramatic wipeouts, maybe like downhill skiing or mountain biking or skateboarding or something, where they go head over heels and this big dramatic wipeout, and maybe they get a couple little bumps and bruises, but they'll just like get up, dust themselves out, and like, I'm good to go. No big deal. And then you could do something as simple as, hey, I bend over to tie my shoes or clip my toenails, and oh, there goes my back. All right. So who knows? It's sometimes weird how the body works, but generally this should go away on its own, hopefully within a week or so. Like even within the matter of days, you should start to feel some improvement here. But if it doesn't, if it gets worse or the pain persists, then my advice is, if in doubt, get it checked out, right? You want to rule out any issues there. So you might want to go see like a chiropractor or someone like that who specializes in that, and they can check you out and see if you have actually done any damage or what. And maybe, you know, a simple spinal adjustment from a chiropractor could help to alleviate some of that pain. But that's what it sounds like to me, just from reading your comment. All right, we have Robert is joining in. I like your statement about consistency. That can be applied in everyday life also. Absolutely. I mean, I have a couple key phrases. One is with that we use within our Muscle After 40 Blueprint Coaching Program is we want to be good enough, but good enough consistently. And the idea behind that is to kind of let go of this all or nothing mentality and focus on being consistently good versus occasionally great. Because the way it is with diet and exercise, most people have this when everything is perfect, right? When my schedule is clear and I've got nothing on the go and I've got all the time in the world and everything is great, my ducks are in a row, blah blah. Then I'm going to join the gym. Then I'm going to start that diet. Then I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do. And the problem is, it's never going to be perfect. And if it is perfect, it ain't going to be perfect for long. Life has a way of throwing challenges at you. Something's going to happen. The excrement is going to hit the fan sooner or later, right? It always does. The life just finds a way to throw that there. So you have to make the best of your current situation. So don't wait till it's perfect. Don't worry about, you know, progress over perfection. And we just want to be consistently good. That's it. Consistently good and over the long term. So I'm consistently good versus occasionally great, or good enough, but good enough consistently. Bottom line, it's you need to look at this as a long-term thing and not this short-term perfection approach. Right? There's a time and a place for short-term perfection, but it's not when it comes to your health and fitness, because short-term perfection is only going to lead to short-term results. If you can't sustain the results for long-term, then you know, it's not going to follow through and last. So you have to really have this broader perspective of I just need to be good enough, but good enough consistently. And I would much rather someone to be like a 7 out of 10 with their diet and exercise, where, you know, it's good, but it's far from great. It could be a lot better, but it's good enough. And I would rather you be 7 out of 10 for the rest of your life versus 10 out of 10 and then get burnt out in the matter of 2 or 3 months and say, oh, this is too hard. I can't do it anymore. Which is the way most people are going to approach fitness and nutrition. Like, especially now we're coming up on New Year's, right? As soon as New Year's rolls around and everyone's feeling fat and guilty after the holidays, they're like, oh my God, I put on 10 pounds over the holidays and I feel like a fat slob. Oh, that's it. I'm joining the gym. I'm going on that diet. I'm going to cut my carbs. I'm going to do 2 hours of cardio a day. I'm going to work out every freaking day until I lose this gut. I'm going to bust my ass in the gym and I'm going to get in shape. And they think they're going to undo months or even years of damage in the matter of, you know, the month of January, right? You know, all that optimism. And then they'll go into the gym, right, on some crazy low carb starvation diet. They'll be working out every day, you know, doing cardio every day, and they might stick that out for a week, maybe 2 weeks or something like that. And then finally they'll be so beat out and burnt out and sore and just living in pure misery. Plus they're going to be hungry and hangry. They're going to like, oh, it's not worth it. Screw it. I'm going back to my old habits again. Right. Whereas if they just approach it with a moderate approach, right? Like, hey, maybe I'm not going to kill myself every day in the gym. I'm just going to do a little workout. Maybe I'm going to just do like a half hour or even every other day. And instead of trying to go on some crazy low carb starvation cutting diet, how about I just try and eat and make better choices? Like, I'm going to have a bit more protein and vegetables and a little less processed crap. Maybe I'm going to swap that alcoholic beverage in the evening for a diet soda instead, right? Maybe I'm going to drink more water instead of, you know, other not so healthy drinks. And just little tiny choices, right? Little choices, more protein, more fruits, more veggies, less processed crap, less alcohol. And then let those little choices compound over time. And that's the secret to sustainability, not this, oh, I'm going to slash my calories and go on some 1,000 calorie a day, you know, low carb, ketogenic, one meal, blah, 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 and while trying to exercise for like 2 or 3 hours a day. You can't burn the candle at both ends and sustain it. It ain't going to happen. It's a recipe for burnout. So this consistency, like consistency trumps intensity. And the reason why I'm harping on this is because this right here is so powerful. Like, even within the Muscle After 40 Blueprint program, and most of the guys who come on board with it have heard me say all this shit before, but once they start applying it in their real life, they still go back to their old habits, and I'm still coaching them, and we're like, no, like, stop trying to be going from zero to hero overnight. We just need to take one step at a time, baby steps in the right direction. And it's almost like I'm half therapist and half fitness coach sometimes, talking people off the edge. That's what one of my friends, Mike Brown, says. He says, you've talked me off the ledge multiple times. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get in, because I know there's a lot of questions coming through here. Steve is joining in. Welcome, Steve. He's a regular over on our Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. He says, you mentioned you followed Dorian Yates' training. What's your opinion on his high intensity training? All right, what I meant by that is, back in the day when I started competing in bodybuilding, Dorian Yates was the reigning Mr. Olympia, and he was all over the magazines at the time. Like, you couldn't buy an issue of Flex or Muscle and Fitness or Muscle Mag or whatever the magazines that were going around. He was in all of them, because reigning Mr. Olympia, right? So I mean, his content was out there, and I remember I even got some of his courses. Like, he had a VHS tape, right? I'm dating myself, not even on DVD. We're talking VHS. He had the VHS Blood and Guts in black and white, right? And I watched that video over and over again until the darn thing broke, right? I mean, like, so I followed a lot of Dorian's programs back in the day, and I kind of tried to model some of my training off his philosophy back then. And it absolutely can work, right? The whole high intensity thing, I mean, it certainly does work. But the problem with it is there's a fine line between high intensity and stimulating muscle growth, and then pushing it too far and then end up getting injured. And Dorian can attest to this, because I mean, he's been through the meat grinder. That's why he had to retire from bodybuilding, because he was riddled with injuries. I mean, torn biceps, torn triceps, effed up rotator cuff, blah, blah. The man's had injuries. And I've had injuries from that style of training. Like, I've torn both my biceps. I've torn a muscle in my back before, and just a lot of nagging aches and pains along the way. So yeah, it can work, but a lot of guys push it to the overkill, if you will. Because I like to look at the bigger picture, and kind of see, like, take bits and pieces from everybody and see, like, how can we kind of get the best of all the different scenarios and the best of all worlds. And if we look back to the previous Mr. Olympia before Dorian Yates, who was Lee Haney, he had a wonderful phrase that I still quote today. It's, you want to stimulate, not annihilate. So when you're training, you just need to do enough to stimulate muscle growth. Like, training to failure and beyond, like the whole Mike Mentzer idea, the Dorian Yates idea, like, rep out to failure as hard as you freaking can. Then we're going to follow it up with 4 reps. Then we're going to follow it up with negatives. Then we're going to do rest pause, and we're just going to suffer it out, right? Like, man up, right? Go big or go home. That's overkill. That is overkill. And for the little bit of progress, that little bit of extra gain you might get from squeezing to failure and beyond failure with all these high intensity techniques, the risk of injury is just grows exponentially. Every time you push yourself that deep, your risk of injury just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I like the idea that Lee Haney had, was stimulate, not annihilate. So you just need to do enough to get the job done, right? We can use another analogy. Like, let's imagine we're going out moose hunting, right? Steve's a Newfoundlander, so he's all familiar with moose hunting, right? So we're going to go out moose hunting. You just need a rifle, right? A rifle can get the job done. I don't need an RPG rocket launcher to go moose hunting. I mean, granted, the RPG rocket launcher is going to kill the moose. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it'll blow the thing to smithereens, but you're not going to have much to bring home, because it's overkill. Whereas if we have a rifle, or even if you want to be more hardcore, a bow and arrow, right? You want something like that, or a crossbow. If you had that, you could get the job done, and it's still going to kill the moose, but there's going to be less risk of blowing the thing to smithereens and overkill. So with your workouts, you just need to train to momentary muscular failure, and that's it. Like once you get to the failure, and what my definition of failure is the point where you can't complete another repetition with good form. So you're struggling, your form starts to break down, and you either have to swing or cheat, or you got to F up your form in order to complete another rep. Once that happens, you've hit failure. Rack the weight, right? And it doesn't mean the point which you cannot move the weight at all. It's the point at which you cannot do another repetition with good form by yourself with slow, controlled form, right? Like, for example, bicep curls is a prime example. If you're doing a nice strict bicep curl, you might get to the point where you can no longer curl that weight. But then if you start heaving a little bit of momentum, a bit of leg drive, you could probably bang out half a dozen more reps. But that's overkill. That's beyond failure because your biceps are already fried at that stage. And now you're just overworking them by bringing in all those assistant muscles, and momentum to carry over. What's the point of doing that? Like, you don't need to do that. You just need to go to momentary muscular failure. That's it. The muscle has been stimulated. There's no point in annihilating it beyond that, right? Let it rest, recover, grow, and then come back and stimulate it again. So that's my philosophy of training. That's the way I go about it now. And that's the way I coach my coaching students. We're not pushing to failure and beyond. We hit momentary muscular failure, and that's it. We're not going beyond with these high intensity training techniques, which really just, in my opinion, it just increases the risk of injury with very little reward benefit, right? The risk to reward ratio is not in your favor, right? It may be in the short term, but long term, it ain't, right? Because whatever little bit of extra gain you get by incorporating all those high intensity techniques, if you tear a bicep, you tear a pec, you blow out your rotator cuff or whatever, that's an injury that could take months or years or may never heal. I mean, you could literally be scarred for life with that. Like, you've probably seen guys who've torn pecs before, like their chest never goes back the same, or guys who've torn biceps. Their biceps are never going to be the same. Even if they get surgery, I mean, yeah, you can kind of band-aid it up and make it better, but it's never going to have that same integrity or that same strength as it did before the tear. So again, the risk to reward, it's not in your favor when you're pushing super high intensity. So another phrase that a good friend of mine was a local powerlifter. He shared this with me, and it's resonated with me. Live to lift another day. So when you're in the gym and you're training and you're kind of pushing yourself, if it doesn't feel like today is the day, or it's just you're pushing hard, it's like, man, I don't know. Like, it's okay to scrap the exercise. If you have to even scrap the workout, live to lift another day, right? You can always go back the next day, or you can always take a day off and go back again. Like, there's no shame in doing an easy workout or even taking a day off for that matter, because you can always go back again and train harder the next time. But when it comes to injuries, if you push too much too soon and you get injured, you're not going back the next day, right? You're not bouncing back from that. Again, that could take weeks, months, or in some cases, you may never fully recover. So you have to think of the long game, not just the short-term gain. You want to think of that long game. All right, what else we got there? We have Don is joining in. Don's a regular. Dan, my bad. Called you Don, but you're Dan. Thumbs up. Richard is joining in from Iowa. Hey, Richard. Richard's a member of our Muscle After 40 Blueprint program as well. And Richard is a gentleman who's made an amazing transformation. Over the past few years now, he's lost well over 100 pounds and totally turned his health and fitness around. So again, much respect and glad you're joining in, Richard. Who else we have joining in? We have Chris. What's on your workout playlist if you have one? my workout playlist, by most people's standards, would probably be boring because it's not even music. I usually listen to audiobooks. I usually listen to podcasts. Sometimes it's even long YouTube videos. Like especially if they're educational videos, I'll listen to them. But I do not listen to music. If I want to listen to music, I'm just going to whatever they're playing at the gym. Like they typically play good music, at least upbeat, good workout music at the gym that I train at, Omega Health and Fitness. But if I'm by myself and I just want to kind of focus, I usually put in my earbuds and I'm listening to a good audiobook, good podcast, something like that. So I'm exercising the body and exercising the mind at the same time. That's my audio of choice, and it's been that way for a long time. Like I have gone through so many audiobooks and stuff like that just through workouts, right? So it's a great way to kind of kill two birds with one stone. And I enjoy it, right? That's my that's my music of choice, if you will. What else we got there? Scott is joining in. He said, I tried to find the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group and I couldn't find it in my search. All right, I'm going to type the direct link into our chat. And that doesn't surprise me because the way Facebook is, there's so much stuff on Facebook. It's you can literally get lost. Like sometimes people have even told me, like, oh, just add me on Facebook. You know, my name is John Smith or whatever their name is. And then I type in John Smith and there's like, wow, right? There's 499 John Smiths. Like, who the hell are you? Like, which one? So yeah, I get it. I'm sure that if you type in, you need to type in Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding. If you search for the full thing, Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding, it should pop up. But if you just type in Total Fitness Bodybuilding, you'll probably get any Facebook group that has the words fitness and bodybuilding in their title. And yeah, you could easily get lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to type in the direct link here now into our chat window, Scott. So this is the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group, the official, right? The real deal, the OG, right? There we go. So that is typing it into our chat window. And again, it's facebook.com/groups/total.fitness.bodybuilding. So Total Fitness Bodybuilding. But again, I know if you do a direct search, you'll probably get, you know, every bodybuilding and fitness group under the sun popping up in your search results. Platinum Gaming joining in, saying the last 4 days, I've only slept 4 to 5 hours for an unknown reason. Will this make me lose muscle and should I keep training? Well, it ain't going to help. And wait, no, we got an update here. He says 4 to 5 hours per night, not in total. Yeah, I kind of figured that, right? If you've went the last 4 days with 4 or 5 hours sleep total, no, don't work out. Seriously, go to bed out of it. What? Don't even watch me. Turn this off and go to bed. But 4 to 5 hours a night. I'm going to sleep is a complicated topic, but I'm going to kind of try and summarize it briefly here. If you have a bad night's sleep, it's not going to make or break things. Like one bad night is not going to make or break your routine. Like you're not going to lose muscle or really disrupt the pattern in the greater scheme of things. But if it starts to persist, so you went 4 days now with 4 days of crappy sleep, yeah, that's going to start to drain your batteries. You know, you're draining the batteries more than you're charging them back up again. So it's going to have a negative impact on your mental cognition. Is going to have a negative impact on your physical performance. So I'm not saying that you have to be totally inactive, but don't be expecting to go set personal records or push yourself hard. If I was in that situation, and sometimes I do, sometimes I go through a phase where I'm just not sleeping well, or crap happens that disrupts my sleep, especially when, my son Harvey was born. And if anybody is a new parent and you got, a newborn baby at home and you're waking up multiple times throughout the night to a crying baby for bottle feedings and diaper changes and whatever, you would love to have 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, right? Like that's the reality. So you got to look at your situation, so if you're not getting optimal sleep, you have to compromise and just scale back the volume, scale back the intensity of your workouts, and think of it more as going through the motions and trying to just maintain while you're going through this phase until you get yourself well rested so that you can start progressing forward again. But in the short term, like a single bad night of sleep is probably not going to have a major impact, on your performance. Like I'll give you a prime example. Like this year I've done 3 bicycle races because that's my sport of choice that I've gotten into. It's competitive sport of choice, I should say. You know, I've stopped competing in bodybuilding, but I've got into competitive road cycling. So that's one of the things I've just enjoy doing. And you know, I'm not the greatest cyclist in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, I can kind of hold my own on the local level, you know, in the weekend warrior category, right? So it's fun. I just enjoy that challenge, and it's something that I've been taking serious and pushing myself with. But one thing I find sometimes before a big event, it's I guess it's just nerves or whatever. You're kind of you're focusing on it and you want to do really well, and just the anticipation and that nervous energy, that nervous excitement. Sometimes I don't sleep the best before an event, and I used to find this back when I was competing in bodybuilding. Like the night before a bodybuilding show, my sleep was crap. I could never get a good night's sleep because I had that anticipation, almost like a kid before Christmas. You know, you're excited and stuff. So very often that night before, my sleep would suffer, but it didn't always hinder my performance the next day, because what I would always prioritize is my sleep in the days and even in the weeks leading up to that. So I try to be well rested, have a good sleep reserve, if you will. And as long as I was well rested in the days and even in the week leading up to the event, even if the night before was kind of a shitty night's sleep, it didn't really throw it off because I had that reserve of sleep in my system, if that makes sense, and I could still perform well, even if I had the you know the anticipation the night before that hindered my sleep. So a single bad night is not going to disrupt things, but if it starts to compound day after day after day, and in your case 4 days, yeah, that's definitely going to start to compound. And if this persists, you might want to get it checked out. Like sleep is such an underrated thing. We kind of live in this society today where people say, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead," and that's like the stupidest answer ever. Because if you take that attitude, you'll be dead sooner. Like sleep is so important. It's important for your mental health, your physical health, everything from your fitness, your fat loss. Like if you don't sleep properly, everything, your overall health, well-being, fitness, fat loss, muscle, everything just goes down, down, down. So you need to prioritize sleep. Like if there was one magic bullet, like sleep is it. And I remember reading in Dr. Peter Attia says in his book Outlive, which I highly recommend if you're looking for a book recommendation, highly recommend it. He said sleep is so important we could categorize it as a performance enhancing drug. Like that's the power of good sleep. And if you see someone who is well rested versus someone who is sleep deprived, the difference can literally be like someone's on performance enhancing drugs versus someone who's not. Like that's the power that sleep has. So you definitely want to prioritize it. It's not something you just want to brush off, or you know, thinking that you're macho because you get by with little sleep, or thinking that you're some kind of tough guy because you don't need sleep. Like that's a crock of BS. Like you need sleep. Right? It's going to be helpful all around. So if this is something you're struggling with, get it checked out. And on another note, just looking at your username, HD Gaming, Platinum Gaming, if you're playing freaking video games all hours of the night, that could definitely be hindering your sleep. So a good strategy to help encourage better sleep: shut down your electronic devices at least 2 hours before bed and start unwinding. And in your case, if you're a gaming addict, which I assume you would be if you're got a gaming username, you know, don't be up all hours of the night playing games. That could be a step in the right direction right there. All right, let's move on. Bob is joining us. Says, Lee, any tips, workouts that can help with my rotator cuff? I heard it trying for a personal record on the incline bench. Got the bar a little forward. It's been 6 months. I've stopped lifting to let it heal, and I still can't hold the arm fully straight. 6 months. Okay. That might be something more serious, like than just a minor strain, because usually a minor strain would heal up within that time frame. You may have actually torn or did some damage there. Ideally, I'd recommend getting that checked out by a professional. Like go to your doctor or go somewhere and get that checked out and just see what you've actually got done there. Now, there are exercises that we can do to help rehab the rotator cuff, but before you get into that, it'd be good to know what you've actually got done there. Like, is it muscle or tendon, or what kind of damage is done to that rotator cuff? And then you can kind of decide on the right rehab. But yeah, like if you said you just did it recently and you were like, okay, what's the strategy in the short term? My shoulder's hurting, but the fact that this was 6 months ago and it's still bothering you and you can't even fully, lock out your arm straight, that's more serious. So I would seriously look into getting that checked out if you haven't already done so. And depending on the healthcare and the medical system you're going to, you may not get optimal service, to say the least. You may have to go to even a physiotherapist or some private clinic like that, rather than just your family doctor or GP. Because I remember back when I had injuries, and like I went to the doctor one time for a torn bicep. Oh, I can put you on a 6-month waiting list to see a specialist. The freaking thing healed up on its own. I mean, it didn't heal up perfectly, but it healed up where it was functional again. So, like, that's the reality of healthcare in some areas. And good old Canadian healthcare, it's free, but you get what you pay for. Right? That's the way I always say. So waiting lists are ridiculous, right? There's another issue. Like, I suffer from carpal tunnel syndrome, and I was wanting to look into options to deal with it. Right? I've been on a waiting list to see a specialist for over a year. Like, it's ridiculous. And in fact, I did see a specialist, and then he recommended me to get some nerve tests to see if I actually had carpal tunnel syndrome. That was back in I believe it was August of 2022, and I'm still waiting for that nerve test. I'm still on the waiting list. So, like, it's absolutely ridiculous sometimes when you're going through healthcare. Like, at least here in Canada, like, it's hurry up and wait. So if this thing is bothering you, you may have to go outside the regular route, but I definitely recommend getting it checked out by someone who can analyze your situation, go through it, and just see what the heck you've got done to yourself, because that's not normal. Now, with that being said, I do have some rotator cuff exercise videos. If you go on YouTube and you just search for like Lee Hayward rotator cuff, you'll see all the videos. Like, there's several of them that I've posted, but that may or may not be the answer. You might want to get a full proper diagnosis first before you worry about trying to rehab. All right, what else we got there? Tony is joining in. Tony Montana Homemade Muscles. Hello from Greece. Says, did you believe for beginner it is better start with strength program 1-2 years and after do hypertrophy? Yes, your beginner programs are awesome, and I think all levels can do it. Strength and hypertrophy kind of go hand in hand, because if you're building your muscles stronger, you're also going to be building them bigger. Now, I know when you get into the nitty-gritty detail of, go deep down the rabbit hole of bodybuilding and strength training and all that, like, some people say, well, this program is a hypertrophy program, this program is a strength program, right? This is a bodybuilding workout, this is a powerlifting workout, this is an Olympic lifting program workout, like, blah 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 blah. But for a beginner, you're just working out. It's all going to happen. You're going to build strength, you're going to build muscle. Like, it's all going to happen simultaneously. And even for bodybuilders, if they're training for hypertrophy, guess how they get hypertrophy? By getting stronger, training with progressive overload. So one comes with the other. Now, yes, you can prioritize it, so you kind of tip the scale in favor of okay, I'm going to maximize my hypertrophy, but it's not like you're going to get one at the expense of the other, right? It's impossible to get bigger without getting stronger, and it's pretty much, almost impossible to get stronger without getting bigger as well. Like, they go hand in hand. Now, yes, there's ways to get stronger without really adding a lot of body weight, especially if you're losing body fat simultaneously and achieving a body recomposition, or focusing on improving your technique and things like that. There's still ways around it. Like, sometimes powerlifters who compete in a weight class sport will maximize their strength while keeping their weight down because they're competing in a weight class. But generally speaking, and especially from the beginner point of view, if you're working out and you're doing so consistently and you're following it up with the proper rest and nutrition and all that, you're going to get bigger, you're going to get stronger. So it's not really a one or the other. It's going to happen all together. But after you've been doing it for a while, like you've got a couple of years of training under your belt and you've seen how your body responds to a basic style of training, then you may want to specialize and prioritize different things. Like maybe you do want to pursue a bodybuilding competition and train as a bodybuilder, or maybe you want to pursue a powerlifting competition and train as a powerlifter, or maybe there's some other athletic sport or something you want to pursue and try and improve in. Or maybe you'll even just notice certain body parts are responding better than others. Like, hey, maybe my arms and shoulders are responding, but my calves are lagging behind. Or I notice my chest is responding, but my lats are not as full. Or whatever. My upper body's growing, but my legs aren't growing. Whatever. Like you'll find that you may have certain muscle imbalances. And then this is pretty common. Like very rarely will the body just perfectly respond in balance and proportion. So after a year or two of training, you may notice that you have some of these imbalances and you want to prioritize them. So you'll take the stronger body parts, put them on a maintenance phase, and then prioritize the weaker body parts to help create that balance and proportion. So like it really depends where you go once you're beyond that initial beginner phase. But in the initial beginner phase, you just want to train for just overall strength, muscle, health, fitness, just kind of get your full meal deal, if you will. All right. So hopefully that clarifies your question. I'm not 100% sure if I did or not, but if I didn't, feel free to follow up in the comments there, and we'll try and elaborate on it the best we can. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on and see what else we can cover. Can you explain volume versus intensity and how they should be used properly? All right. How can we? There's different terms depending on how you want to refer to this. And volume is just the sheer volume of the workout. So it could be like the volume of sets that you're doing. So for example, like if you did 10 exercises and you did 3 sets each, you did 30 sets total volume for the workout. Some people look at it that way. Some people actually try to add up the total weight lifted. And what I mean by that, like if you did 10 reps with 100 pounds, then they say, okay, well, 10 times 100, that's 1,000 pounds lifted, which really doesn't make sense because you didn't lift 1,000 pounds. You just lifted 110 times. So I really would measure the time under tension versus the compounding the weight number. But some programs do this. They just compound and start adding up the total tonnage, if you will, of weights lifted over the course of the workout. And that's how they calculate volume. Intensity kind of has a weird measure as well, because some people refer to intensity as like the percentage of your max. So for example, like if your 1 rep max is 100 pounds, I'm just using that as a simple number, but if it's 100 pounds and you're training and you lift 90 pounds, well, you just lifted at 90% of your 1 rep max. So yeah, that's high intensity because you're pushing close to your maximum poundage. Other people refer to intensity as effort. Like, man, that was a really hard workout. That was intense. So these terms, volume and intensity, they can often get misinterpreted or misled based on how they're being used in the context, like who's referring to them. But it's how you define it. It really depends on your personal preference, how you go about it. Like I've heard, so-called textbook, weight training textbooks refer to, again, the volume is the total amount of work done in the workout. So, the total amount of weight lifted or the total amount of sets, however you want to calculate it. And then the intensity is, again, the percentage of your 1 rep max. How intense was that weight? But again, we got to look at the other side of it as well, which is the perceived exertion side of it, because you could do a workout with very light weights relatively, but if you're doing it for high volume and high reps and high sets and short rest periods and all that, it could feel very intense, and it may actually feel way harder than doing a heavier workout, which by some standards would be considered more intense because it's heavier, but if you're taking longer rest periods. And I'll give you an example. Like if you're doing a CrossFit style workout versus a powerlifting workout. The CrossFit workout where you're trying to get as many reps as possible and you're quickly moving from exercise to exercise and your heart rate is constantly elevated and you're always semi out of breath the whole time because you're moving so quickly from machine to machine or exercise to exercise. Even though the intensity in terms of the weight lifted may not be at your maximum, the perceived exertion and perceived effort of intensity is high. Versus a powerlifting workout, you could be doing super heavy weight at high percentage of your 1 rep max, but if you're taking 3 or 4 or even 5 minutes rest in between sets, it's not going to feel that hard. I mean, until you get to the point where you're actually doing the lift itself, but then you take another few minutes rest to recover. So the workout in total is not going to expend as much energy. It's not going to be as demanding physically, but it's going to be harder, based on just the pure heavy weights that were lifted. So these terms can get thrown around. And that's why I wanted to explain it like this, because it really depends who you're talking to and the context. Right? And I'm not saying that one is right or wrong or good or bad, because, we can make an argument for both styles. Like I can say a workout was really intense because it was a high volume, did a lot of exercises. You got your heart rate was elevated and you did a lot of work in a short unit of time. So it felt very intense. But then vice versa, I could flip the coin and say, hey, that powerlifting workout where we did, worked up to a heavy 1 rep max, that was intense because we set a new personal record in our 1 rep max. Like we actually exceeded our personal best. So we hit a true 100% intensity because we hit a new personal 1 rep max. But other than that lift itself, it wasn't that demanding, and you didn't burn that many calories, and you didn't actually expend that much energy because most of it was sitting around waiting between sets, mentally and physically preparing yourself for that 1 rep max. So, you could argue, depending on your point of view, one is more intense than the other, right? So that's where it can really get muddled. And again, it depends on how you're looking at this. So my advice is try to put it in context of what it is you're actually training for. If this really means anything, like for people who are just training for general health and fitness, who cares? Like as long as you're doing better than you were before, you're improving your volume and you're improving your intensity. But if you're getting into sports performance, you really kind of want to jive with the lingo of your local group, then intense and volume, it will vary depending on the niche that you're in, right? What's considered high intensity for, say, like a CrossFit workout or a bodybuilding workout could be different than a high intensity workout from a powerlifting or a weightlifting style workout, because it's different styles of training and different modes of measuring your progress being used in both sides. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully I didn't confuse you more than than you already were before you asked the question. Anyway, let's move on. I want to one day make a small interview. Okay. I'm assuming with me, if you're posting it, reach out, contact me, and we can discuss it if you want to. And my contact information's down in the description below. All right, next one, we got grind mode. Is bulking worth it? Or necessary? All right, so is bulking worth it or necessary? And it depends. If, and I'm going to again elaborate on it to kind of give you the best context here. If someone is very skinny, underweight, undernourished, and just desperately needs to put some meat on their bones, you could justify a quote unquote bulking program to help them fill out their frame and put some meat on their bones. But if you're looking at someone who's already overnourished, meaning like, I got a gut, but I want to build muscle at the same time, I'm kind of like in that skinny fat category. Is bulking worth it? No, because what's going to happen if you're already predisposition to store excess body fat, and you've got, like, you look down and you don't see abs and ribs on your torso, you see rolls of jelly. If that's what you see when you look at your torso, then bulking is definitely not worth it. If you take off your shirt and you're counting ribs, then yeah, bulking might be worth it. Right? So it depends on the individual and where they're starting from. Right? But most people that I coach are kind of in this, I want to lose the guts, but I also want to build muscle. Right? They're in that category. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. So, like, I'm not as big and as strong as I want to be, but I'm also certainly not as lean as I want to be either. So if you're in that situation, focus primarily on fat loss, getting that body fat off, but still incorporating the proper principles of strength training and proper nutrition so that you can simultaneously build muscle while losing body fat. And what you'll find is, even if you're in a calorie deficit, as long as you're fueling your body with the right nutrients, meaning you're getting enough protein to repair and recover muscle tissue, and you're getting enough nutrients in general so that you're not, undernourished, you can still make up for it by tapping into stored body fat, because that stored body fat is going to help to fuel some of your exercise, right? So you can actually utilize the fat stores to help fuel your workouts, which in turn will help to build muscle. So you can simultaneously build muscle while losing body fat. And this is very common, especially for people who are new to training. Within their first year or so of training, it's very common to build muscle and simultaneously lose body fat. Now, as you get more advanced, and I mean, like, you're serious and you're kind of maxing out your genetic potential, or moving further along down the road of doing so, you're moving in that direction, then it gets a bit tricky. Like, if for someone, like, just say someone has been consistently training in a progressive overload fashion for the last 10 plus years, and they've pretty much maxed out their newbie gains and everything else, and now they're really struggling to make any progress at all. And that's generally the way it works, because in the beginning the gains come relatively easy as long as you're consistent, and then every year thereafter it gets harder and harder and harder to further make progress, because you're getting closer to maximizing your natural genetic potential. So once you get someone who's close to that, then they really have to struggle to make any progress whatsoever. And in order to get bigger or stronger, they may have to purposely bulk or purposely gain weight and sacrifice some of that leanness to try and fill out and gain more muscle. Or vice versa, if you're looking at a competitive bodybuilder who's trying to get shredded for competition, they may have to do the opposite, where if they want to get leaner, they have to actually sacrifice some lean muscle in order to strip off all that excess body fat. And that this is very common. You'll see this as people, like top level bodybuilders, they could be visible abdominal definition, 3 or 4 months out from the show, and they still got to drop 30 or 40 pounds on top of that in order to get the ultra shredded look that we associate now with bodybuilding. So they are literally losing lean mass in order to strip off that last layer of stubborn body fat, because they know that the leaner they are, the more shredded they are, it's worth it. Like a leaner, harder, more ripped physique is going to beat a bigger, softer, smoother physique almost every time, right? Unless there's such a big discrepancy in size. Like if someone's like a skinny twig and another one's like got a lot of muscle mass but just a little bit soft, then it could kind of go either way depending on what the judges are looking for and everything else. But when you're kind of like at an even playing field, like say like the Olympia, world class, where everybody's huge, everybody's shredded, they got to pull out all stops. And if somebody sacrifices an extra 5 pounds of muscle to come in a little bit leaner, a little bit more shredded, that could give them the edge. So it works the opposite direction in that sense. But once you're at the top of your game, then you have to decide, okay, am I going to focus on mass building? Am I going to focus on fat loss? Because trying to do both simultaneously generally doesn't work. But in the early phases, it absolutely can work. All right. So like most of the guys that go through the Muscle After 40 Blueprint program, for example, we take them through 3 different phases. Phase 1 is the metabolic reboot, where we just kind of lay the foundation, get your eating and your exercise and your lifestyle habits in check. Next phase we usually go through, especially if someone wants to lose body fat, is the fat loss accelerator phase, where we focus on, okay, let's strip off that last layer of stubborn body fat so that you're at a healthy, comfortable weight and you're not carrying around excess fat that's not only not aesthetically pleasing, but it's also not good for your overall health and well-being as well. So we want to get you down to a nice, healthy, lean body fat range. And then once you're at your ideal body fat range, then we focus on the phase 3, which is the lean gain body recomp, where we maintain that body fat while filling out your frame with lean mass. And we go through it in different phases, but we never generally go into a pure bulking phase unless it's the extreme case where someone like desperately needs to put meat on their bones. Especially if someone's coming from an overweight, overfat background, I definitely don't recommend true bulking. Now, you can go into a calorie maintenance or maybe even a very slight surplus, but it wouldn't be into the definition of bulking like a lot of people refer to as bulking, where they're just slamming back an extra 500 or 1,000 calories a day, hoping that is all magically going to turn into muscle, because it's not. A very small percentage of that is going to get used for energy to fuel and recover and build from your workouts. And then any excess beyond that is just going to get spilled over into adipose tissue, which is also known as blubber, right? It doesn't magically get turned into muscle. Right? I remember, for those of you who are regulars to the chat, I think it was back this past summer, there was a guy, he was tuning in every week, and he was always saying, oh, I'm in a 5,000 calorie surplus, trying to eat 10,000 calories a day, or some, whether it was true or not, or he was just shooting shit for the, to get a charge out of the video chat, who knows. But he was saying, oh, I'm eating this massive surplus, like well over like 1,000, 2,000, multiple 1,000 calorie surplus a day, and talking about all the weight that he was gaining. And I kept saying, like, dude, if you're legit and you're actually eating that much and you're gaining that fast, there's no way in hell, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that that's lean mass. Like, yeah, you're gaining weight, all right, but it's body fat. Like, you can only build so much muscle, but your body has a almost endless capacity to build body fat, right? Flick on the TV and look at an episode of My 600-Pound Life, right? You'll find 600-pound fat bastards, but you won't find 600-pound muscular people, right? It ain't going to happen. So your body can only build so much muscle, even with all the PEDs out there. But it has an infinite capacity to store body fat if you provide the excess calories for your body to store body fat. So you have to be very careful. And this whole idea of bulking, like a very, very slight surplus is going to be more than enough to achieve a lean mass gain, right? Which is what we want. Once you go beyond that, the rest is just getting spilled over into body fat, right? You want to look at your nutrition from this lens. You want to eat enough so that you can fuel your workouts and recover from your workouts, and basically not be in a calorie deficit so that you're not catabolizing or breaking down your lean muscle tissue. You want to just have enough that you're covering all the bases and you're not in a deficit. And once you have that, then you let the training stimulate and grow muscle. So you push yourself in the gym and train with progressive overload, and then make sure that you're just eating enough to fuel and recover those workouts, and then let the muscle growth happen, not trying to force it to happen by slamming back an extra 1,000 calorie a day surplus or more. Because if you're eating 1,000 calories over and above your maintenance, a very small percentage, like maybe 100 of those calories, will actually go towards muscle growth, and the rest is just going to go to the old belly pop, right? And yeah, the weight on the scale is going to go up, and you're going to feel bigger, and everyone's going to say, oh man, you're bulking up, looking swole, bro. But yeah, when the time comes that you actually want to trim down and lean out again, then you realize, man, I got to go through the whole opposite process and try and lose all this fat that I gained. And I'm speaking from experience, because I did this myself over and over again when I was competing in bodybuilding, because I was a freaking idiot and I didn't know any different. I used to bulk in the off season and then cut pre-contest. And it was yo-yo dieting, up and down, up and down, up and down. And my weight would fluctuate up and down by as much as 50 pounds between contests. And I didn't look any different when I actually dieted down again. So I would bulk up, put on 40, 50 pounds in the off season. Then I'd go cut, diet 40, 50 pounds down, and I'd look the same year after year after year. I was stuck at this plateau, and I was always wondering, well, what's the problem? What am I doing wrong here? And then I think, well, maybe it's because I'm not doing PEDs, or I'm not doing this, or thinking there was some special high intensity technique, or maybe I need to bulk up more next year. And like, I was going through this up and down phase. Whereas if I had just stayed lean and focused on making lean gains, I probably would have looked and made much better progress than ballooning up and down over and over again. It's certainly healthier, and it keeps you. It's healthier, and I think it's better for your body overall. Because if you want the full story, download a copy of the Muscle After 40 Blueprint PDF. You can get it over on my website, leehayward.com. I share that story in detail in that ebook, right? How I made those stupid mistakes of bulking and cutting, and basically digging myself into a rut. And it was only once I got outside of that idiotic bodybuilding, bulking, cutting bubble that I actually was able to keep my weight under control and maintain a healthy weight year round. Right. So that's a long-winded answer to is bulking worth it? Moving on. Let me have a swig of water before we next one. Thank you for doing this each week. It's truly one of the few things I look forward to. Awesome. Appreciate it, Steve. All right. I need comments like that from time to time. Okay? Reinforces that some people actually enjoy what I'm doing. Well, obviously people do. You wouldn't show up if you didn't enjoy it, especially the regulars, because we have some regulars who've been tuning into this week after week after week, like literally for years. So, and I'm sure you must get some value from it, or you wouldn't be doing it. There's a lot of other channels out there that you could probably be checking out if you wanted to. And speaking of regulars, we got one right here. This is Lee Dunnigan from over in the UK. Says, I want to add some yoga or Tai Chi to my training to help with flexibility. I'm not sure which one to do or do a bit of both. Do you have any experience with yoga or Tai Chi? I do with yoga. I have never done any formal Tai Chi. No, not saying that it's not beneficial or whatever, but I personally have never done it, and it's not my realm of expertise, right? So I can't really comment on it, and I don't know how deep they go when it comes to flexibility and mobility type of training, but I know yoga that's exactly what yoga is. Now, yoga is much more than just flexibility. Like it's kind of like a lifestyle, if you will. Now, you don't need to go on full yogi mode here, but you can certainly incorporate yoga type training into your workouts to aid with your flexibility, your mobility, help reduce injury, and also to help build up those small stabilizer muscles that you're never going to hit with traditional weight training and powerlifting and strongman type exercises. Like this is one that blows my mind, is like you will see some guys like bodybuilders who can squat like 500 pounds in the gym, and then they try to hold a yoga pose, like maybe a warrior one, and they're in that lunge position and they're straddled out, and then like and they topple over because they got the legs to squat 500 pounds, but they can't friggin' hold a yoga pose, right? Because it puts their body in a totally different position that they're not accustomed to. And you're engaging all these small stabilizer muscles for balance and coordination. And it's right. They're all like a rubber band man or something. Like they're just all jiggling all over the place. Right. Like trying to stand up a wet noodle. So yeah, yoga can certainly help. And I made a video a while back. It's an oldie one, but it kind of gives you a general overview where I think it's called, geez, let me search for it. I think it's Yoga for Bodybuilders or something like that. But again, if you go to YouTube and search for Lee Hayward Yoga, you should find it. It's an oldie. Like I'm due to update some of these old videos with kind of like a new interpretation of it. Yeah, it was 5 years ago I made that one. So still worth watching. Just a second here. Now I'm going to just grab that link. I'm going to type it into our chat window. Yoga for Bodybuilders video. Done. So yeah, check that one out. I vaguely remember everything I said in that video, because I remember the context and stuff, but I basically was sharing my experience of going through a structured yoga routine. And I think I was maybe 6 weeks into a structured routine that I was following. And yes, it was. I'm just looking at the title of the video. It says Yoga for Bodybuilders, my results after 6 weeks. Okay, there we go. That's what it's called. So yeah, that was my 6 week feedback. And it was positive. I got to say, it definitely was a positive experience and something that I still incorporate into my workouts now. I mean, I don't do the full-on yoga sessions anymore, or at least rarely do I do them, but I always follow up my workouts with some yoga and stretching. And what I'll do is after every workout, I prioritize the muscles that I just trained, and I will stretch out those muscles. And I also like to include some different yoga poses that help to work those areas as well and focus on the flexibility and the mobility. But it's certainly a good addition. Like if you're looking for a well-rounded workout program and you want to kind of cover all your bases, you want to get your strength training, which is your weight training in the gym. You want to get your cardiovascular training, especially what they call zone 2 cardiovascular training, which is your long duration, lower intensity cardio, where you're not, it's not a like a stroll on the beach. It's still, it's kind of like into the brisk walk, get your heart rate elevated, but not to the point where you're gasping for air or you can't maintain it. Like it's not running. Running is too intense for most people to sustain for long periods of time, unless you're a trained runner. But for the average person, running is just too intense. But brisk walking is like the ideal. So that would be good for your zone 2 cardio. And then to follow that up, you want to get your flexibility and mobility. And that's where yoga can certainly come into play. And that if you had those three, think about like the 3 legs of a tripod. You got your strength training, your cardiovascular, and your flexibility / mobility. You got yourself a well-rounded combination there for overall health and well-being and longevity. But yeah, I think it would definitely help. There would be no downside to it, basically. The only downside is fitting in the time for it, but I think it would certainly aid with your training. And it's intense in itself. Like a lot of people think yoga and stuff is kind of like a wussy exercise, or that's for girls or whatever. Like, yeah, try it. Right? It's a lot harder than it looks. All right, let's move on. What else we got there? We have a question here from YT. Basically building off grind mode's question. What's the best for max muscle growth, a surplus, a bulk, or maintenance, main gaining? I kind of went into detail when I was talking about that, so I'm probably not going to go into any more detail about the whole bulking story that I just said a few minutes ago. If you want more information about that, download a copy of the Muscle After 40 Blueprint. Even if you're not 40, I gotta address this too, because I've had so many guys reach out to me saying, well, I'm interested in that whole Muscle After 40 thing, but I'm not 40 yet. Will it still work? It's just a name. Like the reason I call it Muscle After 40 is because this was the program that I followed to get back in shape after 40. And that was a big goal of mine, because here I was, a new father, in my late 30s, right? We started having kids young, right? We are young, old, right? So I'm trying to say, we started old. So I didn't become a father till my late 30s. And then once I became a father, I got the dad bod, and 40 was creeping up. And I find every time you get close to an age with a 0 on the end of it, like that causes you to really reevaluate your life and think like, man, where am I heading here? Am I heading in the right direction or not? And I was approaching that big 4-0, and then I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, man, I'm going downhill. Like Lee Hayward was a former competitive bodybuilder, and I'm like, I'm a fat slob with a 40-inch waist and freaking got love handles hanging over my hips here. Like, what the hell? Like, I was not happy with the direction I was headed. And even people on YouTube, because I was still making videos for my Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, and people were calling me out on that stuff too. Right? I don't even do I have them up here on my? Oh, I got to share this. Guys. Right? Because I know the people watching this, none of you would ever comment this, but here's some of the comments that people used to share or post on my video. So here it is. Let me just read that. Can you see that? Is that coming through here? Let me make that a bit smaller. And I'm going to take away the question. He looks like he's wearing a fat suit. LOL, this guy is fat, not even in shape. Who is this guy? Why is this guy a bodybuilding coach but looks fat? This guy is fat. Maybe he should get in much better shape before he gives advice. This guy's pure fat. Why is he teaching us? Lee looks like he's carrying a fair chunk of fat in this video. Why would I listen to you? Your body looks like a fat piece of shit. So this is the kind of positive encouragement that I was getting as I put on a few pounds of blubber, right? So I was not feeling very good about myself at this stage. I was feeling like a fat piece of shit, thanks to these type of comments coming in day after day. And I said, you know what? I got to do something about this. So that's where the Muscle After 40 program came in. Because I said, I'm approaching 40. I don't want to be a fat slob over 40. And I certainly don't want to be setting a bad example for my son and teaching him that it's okay to let yourself be fat and out of shape as you get older. So I called it Muscle After 40 because that was my mission. I said, you know what? I want to have muscle after 40. I want to be in shape after 40. And then not only get in shape, but stay in shape. So that's where the whole over 40 thing came about. But it still works for guys who are in their 30s, or if you're in your 20s or whatever. Like, the younger you are, the better it works because you got youth on your side, right? If it can work for an old fart, in his 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, it can certainly work for someone in their 20s or 30s or whatever age you are. So I just want to clarify that because I know I got followers from all age brackets, and I've had a lot of people who are hesitant to reach out for help because they say, well, I'm not 40 yet, and this is only going to work if I'm over 40. I'm like, no, it's going to work better if you're under 40, but it will still work if you're over 40. Right? The reason I call it over 40 is because I factor in the subtle differences that we need to make as the body gets older. Like, the older your body gets, the more you need to respect it and appreciate it versus just giving it sheer use and abuse. Like, when you're in your 20s, you can sometimes get away with less than optimal training, less than optimal sleep and lifestyle habits, consuming excess alcohol, poor food choices, and all that stuff. And you can still get away with it because you got life or youth on your side. But as age catches up to you, your body is less resilient to that stuff. So you very often cannot be pulling an all-nighter and going to the gym the next morning with a hangover and still having a half decent workout and blah blah blah. Like, no, you have to respect your body more. And also comes to rest, recovery, and you just can't abuse it. You have to respect it. And that's what I focus on with the Muscle After 40 is like, how can we respect and appreciate our body and not just beat it to the ground like a lot of guys do when they're in their 20s, when they think they're invincible. Because I've been there. I used to be that guy in my 20s who thought I was invincible until I got injured, right? Until my first muscle tear when I was 28 years old. And then I realized, oh, I'm not invincible. I can actually get hurt like everybody else. Wow. Right? Wake up call. So that's the reason why it's called Muscle After 40. Right? Just want to share that. And where the hell was I? I know I went off on a tangent rant there, but I lost my place in the video chat. We were talking about bulking. Yeah, and I said go download a copy of the Muscle After 40 program because that's where I share my mistakes that I made with the whole bulking, cutting bull crap and what we focus on now. All right. Okay, there's a couple other questions I'm just going to quickly address here, and then we're going, holy shit, no, there's a lot more questions. There's no way I'm going to get through all these tonight because we're already an hour and 18 minutes in. But let's just see. I'll just address a couple more here. Hi, Lee. I've been training for hypertrophy, eating extra calories. I've made decent progress. I am bigger, 150 pounds to 172 pounds, but my body fat is 20%. Do I need to lower to add more muscle? You're at that threshold. I definitely would not want you to get any fatter than 20% body fat. Like, ideally, that's you're pushing to the point of you got some extra chub on at 20%. Now, again, that depends on the method of body fat testing you're using because some methods will give you higher readings than others. But at 20%, I'm seriously doubt like you're looking at visible six-pack abs. You're probably looking at a soft belly roll, right? You can pinch an inch, right? You got some muffin top and some squish down there around the belly. I would definitely put the brakes on the whole bulking and at the very least go back to a calorie maintenance probably bump up your cardiovascular exercise and focus on achieving a body recomposition. So probably keeping your weight in that 170 range, but trying to improve your composition at that weight. That's probably where I would recommend heading in in the near future if you want to improve your overall gains and just improve the way you look and feel in general. There's no benefit to going beyond 20% body fat. Like that's pushing the over fat range right there. You're at the upper threshold, right? We want to kind of bring that down to the mid teens or the low teens, somewhere in that range, and just focus on achieving that body recomposition where you're gaining lean muscle while simultaneously burning body fat. And you can do that with better food choices and a bit of extra cardio as well. And again, if you want some help with like mapping out an action plan on how to actually do that, the specifics, feel free to reach out to me. Again, I got my contact information down below this video in the description below. Right? We can map out an action plan for you to show you exactly how to do that. Okay. We've got Michael joining in. Hiya, Michael. How's it going? Richard's got a question. Do you recall Casey Viator? He used to train with Nautilus and did an experiment in the 70s. Yes, I am familiar with Casey Viator. I read a lot about him back in the day, and he did did they call it the Colorado Project or the Colorado Experiment or something like that? I got to do a search here because obviously I'm assuming it was in Colorado. But Colorado Project, was it something like that? I might not even come up in the search now because that we're talking like this is way back. This is back before the internet days. I'm just trying to search here now, see if I can find it there. Colorado Experiment. That's what it was. My bad. Yeah, it's actually a whole Wikipedia page just popped up there when I did a search for it. The Colorado Experiment was a bodybuilding experiment run by Arthur Jones using Nautilus equipment at Colorado State University. It is of interest due to its claim of the incredible results that can be achieved with a small number of sessions using single set high intensity repetitions to momentary muscular failure, focusing on negative and lowering multi-joint exercises. The first subject, Casey Viator, gained 63 pounds of muscle in 28 days and blah, 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 blah. All right. First off, can someone gain 63 pounds in 28 days? It is certainly possible, but it's not the norm. All right. And the whole idea of 63 pounds of muscle, it ain't 63 pounds of dry muscle, but could someone physically gain 63 pounds? Yeah. And I'm going to elaborate. Well, this is going to take a long time. You opened up a long question here, Richard. If somebody dieted down for a bodybuilding competition or is starting back after a layoff, and you've been on a low calorie phase for a while, your body can rebound a lot quicker and regain lost mass quicker than it took you to gain it initially. And I'll give you a prime example. Like back in my bodybuilding days when I used to deplete myself for a competition and then I start pigging out and stuffing myself after a competition, I would literally gain 20 plus pounds in the matter of 48 hours after a contest. Like I literally did that once. I remember I weighed in at I think it was I can't remember one of the Newfoundland provincial championships I competed in, but I think of my contest weight was 170 pounds, and literally 48 hours later I stepped on the scale and I was over 190, like 191 or something like that. Like in 2 days, I put on 20 something pounds in 2 days. Now, is that 20 pounds of muscle? Well, we could say it is, but it's really just water weight and glycogen and intestinal bloat and everything else. It's just like you depleted and dehydrated and got your weight down to as low as it could physically go in order to make weight for competition. And then you just gorged it and rehydrated it. So it's almost like soaking a sponge, and it's just all of it getting soaked up. So the muscles just absorb calories and nutrients and fluid at an exponential rate when it's been depleted. So that's probably explaining why the Colorado experiment with Casey Viator, how he gained such a massive amount of weight in a short period of time. He was probably already at a decent weight because I mean he was a top level bodybuilder back in the day. and then he let himself go, or he dieted down, something along those lines, and then he's basically regaining lost mass. And it's easier to regain lost mass the second time around than it is to gain it initially. So that kind of skews the experiment, because it's not like true new novice newbie gains here. This is a seasoned pro lost gains and is regaining them back. But bottom line, it's still an interesting experiment. I know, I think it was Dennis Weiss wrote a book going into a lot of details about it. And a lot of the old time writers wrote stuff about it back in the day. And that's where I found out about it, by reading some of the old bodybuilding books. But there's certainly valuable nuggets and takeaways, but they're blowing things out of proportion, right? Like they're selling a ton of sizzle for every ounce of steak, if you know what I mean. Like they're extrapolating and making it sound way the hell more dramatic than it really is. And that's one of the good things about the internet these days, is because when people start blowing smoke up your ass and exaggerating and shooting, hot air, there's always a whistleblower out there to say, you know what? Yeah, there is some truth to this, but there's a lot of BS and smoke and mirrors behind it as well. And that's the case with this whole Colorado experiment. Yeah, there's some truth and some legit information to be gained from it in their methods. But the results that they claim, like, oh, I'm going to put on 60 pounds of muscle in 28 days. Like, no freaking way. Like, the average person would be lucky to gain 68 pounds of muscle in their entire lifetime of training, let alone do it in the matter of 28 days. So yeah, they're blowing things out of proportion. But nonetheless, if anybody wants to Google search it, you certainly can. It's the Colorado experiment with Casey Viator. You might find some old information about it. And who knows? You might even be able to download some of the old ebooks, because they might be floating around there in the internet somewhere. All right, what else we got there, guys? I'm going to get ready to include this up because I've been rambling on long enough. Gary's saying, anything wrong with doing a little whole body exercise machine routine daily at the gym? No, not necessarily. The only thing is, you want to make sure that you can recover and grow from that. If you're coming back to the gym, and this kind of sounds like a newbie type question, just based on nothing against you, Gary, but just based on the question itself, kind of sounds like maybe you're trying to get back into working out again. I would recommend every other day versus daily. That daily it's hard to commit to, and it's also hard on your body. You need those rest and recovery days in between your workouts, because when you work out, you're not building muscle in the gym, right? Even though it might feel like you are, and you're pumped up and everything else, and you say, man, I'm building muscle, I'm getting jacked, I'm getting swole, look out. It feels like you're building muscle, but you're not. You're tearing muscle down when you're in the gym. You're breaking it down. And then it's when you rest and recover outside the gym, that's where the actual growth takes place. So the rest days, your off days, are just as important to building muscle as the actual workout days. So I personally, this is the way I structure my own workouts. I work out one day, I take the next day off. And on those off days, that's when I'll usually do some sort of cardiovascular exercise, but it's not placing stress and demands on the muscles, joints, tendons, and ligaments. I'm working a different energy system by doing the low intensity, long duration cardio. So weight training one day, cardio the next. That's how I structure my workouts for long-term results. And this is how I get the benefits of daily exercise and keep that daily exercise habit alive without overtraining and burning myself out. But if you did weight training every single day, it's going to catch up to you. Like, you might be able to get away with it for a week or two, maybe even a few weeks, who knows? But eventually, it's going to start to wane on you, and you'll feel like, oh man, my shoulders are hurting, my elbows are hurting, my hips, my knees, Jesus, like I feel like an old man. I got aches and pains all over. It's because you're breaking down the muscle and the tendons, joints, and ligaments faster than they can recover. So you need to factor in the stimulation in the gym, and then the rest and the recovery and the growth outside the gym, and then go back and do it all over again. So stimulate, rest, recover, grow, stimulate, rest, recover, grow. And every other day or 3 days a week is an ideal routine for most people. So moving on. Terrence is asking, what are my thoughts on digestive enzymes? There's certainly a benefit if you have digestive issues. In some cases, they may actually be essential depending on your digestive issues. All right. So I'll give you a prime example. If someone is lactose intolerant, they need digestive enzymes to help their body break down and digest lactose. If you know of anyone who is lactose intolerant, or if you yourself are, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it also applies to other forms of food. Like there's digestive enzymes that help to break down protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And if you have any digestive or gut health issues, sometimes supplementing with digestive enzymes can certainly help with that. Um, but yeah, there's a time and a place for them. But with that being said, some people have pretty good gut health and they can eat food and digest it without a lot of gas, bloating, or discomfort. So it's really an individual thing. And generally speaking, the younger you are, the more your body naturally produces digestive enzymes. The older you get, the less natural digestive enzymes people produce, and sometimes supplementing with them can be advantageous. All right. Natural unprocessed foods, you know, if you're getting your fruits and your veggies and then the natural unprocessed foods, that helps a lot. Getting fermented foods in there also helps a lot with gut health. Basically, anything you can do just to improve your overall gut health will also improve the digestion and utilization of the foods you eat. But it's not a must-have supplement, but it's certainly well, for most people, it's not a must-have supplement unless you do have the digestive issues, like I mentioned before. But it certainly is, there's no harm in supplementing with them, right? You can certainly do it and see how your body responds to it. And to follow up with Gary's question, I was correct. He says he's currently 23 days into his daily routine. I mean, kudos to you for doing it. Like most people do not stick to a workout routine for 23 days in a row. I mean, I know it's just a shy over 3 weeks. And in the greater scheme of things, that's not that long, but in the real world, that's a long time. Most people work out for a week or two and they say, "Oh, I didn't see any. I've been working out all week and I didn't see the muscles or the abs. Screw this. All right. I'm going back to the sofa with a bag of chips and a box of beer." Right? Like, so kudos to you for sticking through for 3 weeks and 2 days. But, you know, it's going to take a lot longer than that to see some real noticeable changes. And just keep what I said in mind. Like if you've been working out every single day so you've had 23 days on and not a single day off, you're probably going to start to feel some aches and pains and niggles in those joints, tendons, and ligaments. And you probably start to feel the fatigue, right? You need to factor in those rest days because, you know, you can break your body down faster than it can recover. And if you do that, that's what's referred to as overtraining. And that's not productive. That's kind of like digging yourself into a rut, right? It's almost to give you an analogy, Gary, of how this works. Think if you want to get a suntan, right? You go out in the sun to get a suntan. If you get a little bit of sun stimulation and then you let your skin rest and recover and heal from that sun stimulation, it responds by getting darker, and you can still keep healthy skin, and it just starts to respond to the sun exposure and it gets a little bit darker. But if you go out there and you say, "Oh, I'm going to get a suntan and I'm going to get it right away, so I'm going to spend 6 hours in the sun today and I'm going to do it, you know, every day for a week long vacation. I'm going to spend all day in the sun." You'll turn red as a lobster, and then your skin is going to peel and blister, and you're not going to get a suntan because whatever burnt up skin you have is just going to peel and it's not going to actually darken and improve your skin pigmentation, right? It's just overkill. And that's what often happens when people try and work out too much, is they're breaking their body down faster than it can recover. So you're not actually building the body stronger, you're actually breaking it down and making it weaker. And plus it can reduce your immune system and all that kind of stuff. So there's a whole slew of things that can happen if you get into serious overtraining. Most people don't do it simply because they don't have the willpower or the discipline to actually get themselves into a serious overtrained state. But some people do, especially if you're looking at like athletes and people who are very committed and are very disciplined and got the willpower and they're willing to go the distance. Sometimes we got to hold back the reins there, right? And I've seen this a lot with some of my coaching students. Like they're all full of piss and vinegar and they just want to go, go, go and think, hey, the harder I go and the more I go, the faster my results are going to be. And it doesn't always happen that way, right? You have to pace it. Like you cannot rush the process, right? Another analogy we can use, like you're not going to have a baby any faster by getting more women pregnant. Like, you know, it takes 9 months to have a baby. We can't get 9 women pregnant and have a baby in a month. Right? Like you can't shortchange the process. It takes time. So same with building muscle. Like, it takes time. You have to stimulate, then you have to let it rest, recover, grow, and then stimulate again, rest, recover, grow. You have to go through that process. And if you just try and shortcut it and say, well, screw the rest, recover, and grow, I'm just going to stimulate. No, it ain't going to happen. You're just going to burn yourself out and dig yourself into a rut. So take that into consideration. And maybe for your next 23 days, try doing day on, day off. And I'd be willing to bet you would actually approach each workout feeling stronger, feeling more refreshed, and probably able to push yourself and lift heavier and actually get more muscle stimulation from those workouts if you were to do it every other day versus doing it every single day. I know I certainly do. Like, if I sometimes get into a phase where my schedule is screwed up and I end up doing a few days in a row, and then I end up taking a couple of days off and then do a few days in a row, a couple of days off. After a few days in a row, like, I'm feeling it. Like, I'm starting to feel worn out. But when I have those rest days, man, I can go back to the gym feeling recovered, refreshed, energized, and able to give it 100% intensity. So again, those rest days are just as important as the training days. All right. And Jesus, there's more questions coming through. All right. Again, I appreciate all the questions, guys, but I'm going to have a hard cutoff right now because I normally do these video chats for an hour, but lately an hour is like a fart in the wind. It just goes by. So we're currently at an hour and 35. And yeah, I'm getting tired. So I'm gonna do a hard cutoff here. Hopefully you enjoyed the video chat. Hopefully you got some value from it, and hopefully you got your question answered. And if you didn't, if you have a question there lingering in the comment section and you would like to reach out to me personally, then feel free to do so. You can message me through Facebook. You can send me an email. Contact information down below in the video description. Just pop it up. Or if you want, you can head on over and join us on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group and post your questions there, and we can chat over there on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group. And this is a great way to keep that conversation going throughout the week. All right, we have our live video Q&As on Fridays, but over on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding group, we can keep the conversation going throughout the week as well. So feel free to join us over there. And in the meantime, have yourself a fantastic weekend. Get your Christmas shopping done if you haven't already done so. Don't be that last-minute Christmas shopper. Get it done now. And I will talk to you next week. Same time, same place. Have a good one. Take care. Over and out.